Alright, so boom. As y'all saw in the media, the news has just been broken. The gavel has been slammed and the NFL is banning the hip drop tackle from the game of football. Not that the hip drop tackle was ever some sort of technique that defenders had to use in order to get people down. It's just an option that they had to go and make tackles. In fact, I'm pretty sure they had to define this as a hip drop tackle when they came through with the thought process of having to ban this particular technique that they claim it just so happens to be. So if a defender happens to wrap their arms around a ball carrier or happen to have them both held by both their arms, then proceeds to unweight themselves and drop all of their weight onto the lower extremity of the ball carrier, they will not only be flagged for 15 yards, they'll also be hit with a subsequent fine at the conclusion of the game. And I don't like it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all for player safety. I'm not saying go back to the days of Dick Night Train Lane and freaking clothesline people from the neck with a lariat that JBL would approve. However, at what point are we going to allow defenders to play defense? It's starting to get ridiculous. Throughout the entirety of this millennium, since 2000, only thing we've done is made it more and more and more difficult for defenders to play defense. Because I just want you to think about this for a second. Consider what we do. We'll utilize quarterbacks here. How hard is it to sack a quarterback now? Incredibly difficult, because you can't hit a quarterback low, can't hit them high. If you do hit them, you got to make sure you don't put your weight on top of them. We've had numerous different moments in which there was incidental contact from the helmet to the quarterback's helmet just because somebody may have lowered their head. Oh, I should say the quarterback may have lowered their head when the defender is coming in, and they've been flagged for that. Now, take a look at what we've done with ball carriers. Of course, the horse collar is something that's been flagged for years, and nobody's complaining about that because the probability of a horse collar tackle is not as common as most people would like to believe the hip drop tackle just so happens to be. However, let's really consider from a defensive perspective what happens in a gang tackling situation. Because how many times have you seen like a Najee Harris, a Derrick Henry, a Nick Chubb, those bigger backs who's able to break through tackles and run individuals over? How many times have you seen defenders have to gang up to take that person down? Are we going to end up seeing hip drop tackle flags in those scenarios? Or is it only going to be on one-on-one situations? Because what is gang tackling? One defender is struggling to take somebody down, and then their teammates come around, and what's the best method to get the person down? You pull them backwards. What's the easiest way to pull somebody backwards? Wrap your arms, drop your body, the other person can't move anymore. Of course, the defenders is not deliberately trying to put their body on somebody's lower extremities, but it's starting to get out of hand now. Defenders can't do nothing. But for whatever reason, why is the chop block still legal on offense? If we're talking about, injuries that have been sustained, don't get me wrong, Mark Andrews, Kenyon Drake a couple of years back, and countless different ball carriers throughout the history of the NFL, you're warranted to have your concerns about this hip drop tackle still being legal. And now you can celebrate and be like, hey, we're getting this out the game. But from a defender's perspective, what do you want them to do? Because if I'm struggling to tackle somebody head up one-on-one, you can't sit there and be like, well, you just got to play better at football. Sometimes there are unfair advantages. If you see Derrick Henry break into the secondary and then you have a cornerback who's getting off of a block, and now I got to go and try to hawk somebody down. Not everybody's a Brian Dawkins, Weapon X, freaking fly through the air like Wolverine and then take somebody down just off the strength of their success in the weight room. Sometimes it's going to take some effort to get that person down, and you might just have to get dragged a couple of yards, then you can drop your weight and take them out. So what happens now? We're going to see a ton of DBs, and truly, there are going to be some linebackers too getting drug across the damn gridiron. And you know what's crazy? Those plays are going to end up on SportsCenter Top 10. Those plays are going to get plastered all over social media. Those plays are going to get revered by the populace because we're going to be on some, wow, look at the running backs run. Look at that wide receiver break those tackle and drag those defenders because the defender can't take them down. Then, here's another element that people are overlooking. How often do you think they're going to throw this flag? The NFL is claiming they're going to try to set it up the same way and have it reviewed, not necessarily reviewed, like they'll go to the booth to see if it's like a targeting, but they're going to try to, judge it the same way they do helmet to helmet. But how often do they throw the flag for helmet to helmet? And how often do you have a situation to where the helmet to helmet happens in football as often as a hip drop tackle will happen? Every single play where you have a running back run through the A gap, B gap, and they run into a gang of defenders, how many times have we seen a defender take somebody down by way of having to drop their weight? So what's going to happen? An increase in flags galore throughout the entire year. And what happens there? You move offensives down the field even faster. You now have offenses score more points than ever. And defense is pretty much not even going to be allowed on the field. It's starting to get ridiculous. Like, don't get me wrong. There's ways in which you could play great defense without going against the rules. But now we've got defenders having to play the game of football handicapped. Arms handcuffed behind their back. You got J.J. Watt, Richard Sherman having to go and take to social media to defend the defense. Of course, I understand the perspective from the offensive players, but let's call a spade a spade. You don't see the offense being limited like the defense is being limited with all these rule changes. It's just not happening. Who in their right mind, growing up in this generation, wants to play defense? The children all want to be offensive players because that's where the big stardom is. And moreover, the rules are curated towards them. Everything is about offense, 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 offense. It's getting ridiculous. And truly, in my opinion, I think this rule change will only last about a year to 2 years max. I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw with the challenging of pass interference. It lasted one season and then they got rid of it. I anticipate this only lasting 1 to 2 seasons because the referees are going to have to constantly throw the flag, because I promise you, ball carriers will be bitching about this person dropped their weight, this person dropped their weight. And furthermore, here's another question, because when I was reading a couple of articles on the change of the rule, I didn't see anything regarding ejections. So if one player continues to be penalized for dropping their hips, are we going to end up seeing some sort of suspension situation? Ejection situation? Because we've already have a problem with this helmet to helmet with the fines. Because remember, after games, the NFL, even if certain things weren't flagged, we seen it last year on offense and on defense, where players ended up getting fined for helmet to helmet contact at the conclusion of the game. So does that mean the NFL's also going to keep reviewing game footage to see if somebody actually did violate the rule and was not flagged for it, and then you're going to fine people? They're stealing money. You could just leave it at a 15-yard penalty. If you're now fining people as well, you're going to have people legitimately, defenders, having business decisions on the field to let somebody score a touchdown or break off an incredibly long run or catch and run so they don't lose out on money. The fans don't understand now. But wait until the games are played and you're going to see it at scale. This is a terrible decision. It's a terrible decision, and it's going to come back to bite the NFL in the ass. Here's the last thing I'm going to say about it. Again, I'm not somebody who's against player safety. I'm not saying bring back the Dick Night Train lane or freaking horse collar, or well, not horse collar, but the night train necktie and all this other stuff. Don't bring out Stan Hansen and JBL with the lariat clothesline from hell. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Deacon Jones or freaking Joe Green slap people against the side of their helmet. I'm not saying that. But there comes a point to where you have to look at football players and have them understand there is a risk in the game that you play. This is a collision sport. I'm not saying go out there and anticipate tearing an ACL or tearing an Achilles or breaking your femur or shattering your goddamn tibia. I'm not saying that. But you've got to understand the risk and the brutality and the consequence that comes with playing football. Injuries are a part of the game. Unless you have somebody who's incredibly dirty, who takes the field, who's intentionally trying to hurt you, more often than not, the defenders are simply trying to just make it to the next play by stopping you from advancing. And at what point are we truly going to sit here and say intent is what truly should be on the marquee. If there's a situation in a game to where there's such a deliberate drop of the hips to where it appears that somebody was intentionally trying to hurt somebody, if you want to flag somebody for that, cool. Similar to what they attempt to do with targeting in college football, and now since when they elevated it to the pro game to where if there's a helmet to helmet that appears to be so egregious, you get ejected. That's something that I can understand, but I can guarantee you this is gonna backfire, because every other play, numerous times on the same possession, you're gonna see flag after flag after flag after flag after flag. I think the first 4 weeks of this season is going to be the worst watch of football from a fan perspective and the players on the field, because the refs are not gonna know how to call this. I don't think it's a good decision. Y'all let me know in the comment section what y'all think, because truly I believe football should be played the way football is intended to be played. I'm not saying that you shouldn't look out for the health of the players, but there comes a point to where we've got to start calling a spade a spade. Y'all literally only doing this because you want to see the offense continue to run up the score. Because why is it that offensive players can tuck their goddamn head and then try to run somebody else over, have helmet-to-helmet contact, and the percentage of the flags being thrown to back up an offense when something like that happens, incredibly small. Yes, they'll get a fine after the fact, but that doesn't take the W out of the win column if their team just so happens to win. Holding can be called damn near every single play. I promise you. Watch what happens to defenders. It's only a matter of time before they start increasing the fine or the yardage for illegal use of the hands or defensive holding or pass interference. And here's the last thing that I'm going to say. This has nothing to do with the hip drop, but this is primarily for the NFL officiating crew. Can we change pass interference to rather than being a spot foul, put the maximum at 15 yards? Because that doesn't make sense. How many times do we see drives go yards down the field off the back of somebody just saying, fuck it, somebody down there, a defender mess around and trip, or maybe they about to give up a touchdown and they tug on the receiver and all of a sudden you've got a 50-yard drive all because of a flag. How about we start really being practical? I don't like the call. Y'all let me know in the comment section what you think about this hip drop tackle, banishment, and we'll move forward from there. Oh, and one more thing. Can we stop going on Twitter and having fans argue with NFL players? People coming at J.J. Watt and Richard Sherman on Twitter talking about y'all bitching and moaning. Oh, when you just play the game, you get paid millions. Fam, they play the game at the highest level. If there's anybody who has the credentials, moreover, the authority to complain about rules, it's people who played. Sometimes the fans should sit out the conversation and listen objectively. And I recognize this could be a bit of, cognitive dissonance, given that I too am a fan. I'm not a player. I recognize that. Yes, there could be, catch-22 in what it is that I'm saying. But sometimes the fans should not be going at the players as it pertains to the, change of the rule. Let the players have their conversation and we can, talk and debunk based on what it is that they said. But one way or another, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. But me personally, I don't like it. You mean to tell me you watched the entire video but you haven't subscribed? Hit the subscribe button and become a member on Patreon or on YouTube to get access to the Discord. We're waiting for you in the Shadow Realm. Just do it! Make your dreams come true! Please! Please!
What are you waiting for, huh? Oh my God.